Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel, Techstrong TV. We are live from the beautiful city of Paris in springtime here at KubeCon EU, or KubeCon Europe. And this is supposed to be the biggest KubeCon ever. I was talking to some of the CNCF folks last night. They're expecting around 13,000 people for this week's event. We're excited to be bringing you our coverage live this week, right from the show floor as usual. Our first guest, we've had him on here actually at KubeCon in Chicago last time. Maybe we did Amsterdam too, Alan?
I think we did.
Yeah. He's a KubeCon regular for us.
Yeah.
My friend Alan Shreve, he's the CEO of Ngrok.
That's right. It's a pleasure
We
to
got
be
it
here.
right.
Yeah.
Alan, it's great to have you here. Alan, let's start off. Not everyone out here is going to be familiar with Ngrok. So before we talk about anything else, let's kind of settle that.
Yeah. So Ngrok is the unified ingress platform for developers. Ngrok basically allows developers to create ingress into their Kubernetes clusters and any number of other clusters as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're CEO. You've been at a few of these already. I know it's early in the morning, day one, but what's been your impression so far of this KubeCon?
Just got here, and looks like there's a tremendous amount of energy. Really excited to be here, and looks like a beautiful venue and a beautiful setup.
It certainly is, and we're in the middle of the show floor. People are buzzing about. It's going to take me a little while, I think, until I could kind of form some opinions.
Sure.
Anyway, Alan, let's talk about Ngrok. You guys had some news that you're announcing here at KubeCon. Share with our audience if you can.
Yeah, so we're very excited to be launching support for the Gateway API. The Gateway API is a new specification. It's one that's been worked on for a while. The most recent set of core resources for it were, I believe, finalized around KubeCon Chicago time. And it is the successor to the well-known Ingress API.
Yes.
And we're really excited to be launching support for it in Ngrok's product.
So when we say support for it, there's support and then there's support. You
Sure.
know what I mean? Talk to me about the level of this support. Is it true API to API integration? Is it, exactly what do we mean by that?
Yeah, of course. So our initial support for the Gateway API is just a developer preview to begin with, which means we're supporting the majority of the core resources that are required for an implementation. And then we will be adding in the next couple months some additional support for some more of the extended pieces of the Gateway API, including some custom extensions that work with some of our functionality that Ngrok allows you to layer onto traffic as it enters your network.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, it's great that they're kind of upgrading the Ingress API to this Gateway API. What do you hear from your customers about that, though? Is this like a must-have, a killer kind of thing, or kind of okay, nice to have?
Yeah, what we're seeing is really a lot of interest in the Gateway API. Customers are excited to be like early adopters of the new specification. Specifically, there are new, like the new API, the Gateway API is more expressive than the Ingress API, which means it allows you to encode more capabilities into the objects that you create. The Ingress API previously relied a lot on kind of like string annotations and things that were not type safe and not vendor portable. And the Gateway API adds support and smooths out a lot of that. For us specifically, we're very excited because our support for the Gateway API works a little bit differently than most other vendors' support for the Gateway API. Unlike other vendors, our gateway API support actually extends to our entire global network.
Okay.
Most gateway API support tends to be focused on providing that functionality within the cluster itself, right? The pods that are deployed are the ones that are providing the functionality. Just like our ingress controller support, our gateway API support works exactly the same way, where it projects that functionality out to all of ngrok's global points of presence, which allows you to accelerate the functionality that we provide via the gateway
Sure.
API to a global audience. And it also allows us to provide many of them in a global way. And can tell you a little bit more about that as well.
Very cool. Look, cloud native. So we're doing a report over at Techstrong called DevOps Next. And the premise of it is that we're kind of entering the next evolutionary phase of the entire software development lifecycle.
Yeah.
DevOps included. Cloud native has become much more mature, polished. It's a de facto kind of standard now. What does that mean for ngrok? And is that what you're hearing from our customers? Or our customers, your customers?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with evolutions like the Gateway API, I agree that we're seeing more and more polished, like layered onto the Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystems. We are seeing what that really like means for us as we like move into a next phase of like cloud native adoption is remember that ngrok's origins and our support extend far beyond the Kubernetes ecosystem. But what it means for us is that we are seeing many customers adopting us through Kubernetes and through a cloud native way, whereas previously they may have been adopting us through other means like our agent, which can be deployed to create ingress. And we also have SDKs that you can use to bake ngrok's ingress directly into applications itself. I think we might have talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
In Chicago.
I think yep.
So we're seeing, more and more folks, especially those who are using ngrok for production, adopt us for production use cases through Kubernetes and cloud native. And especially folks who are on the bleeding edge, folks who are using us for new ML use cases, really like looking to adopt through the Kubernetes controller as well as like through the Gateway API.
I think one of the other things in that theme, though, Alan, is generally when you look at evolutions of systems and ecosystems, initially it's what I call the cobbled together phase, right? Where we take a bunch of point things and cobble them to make them work together, right? And so you have a lot of companies that have products, but as these cobbled together solutions start to mature, a lot of those products become features, right, in a bigger product. Do you see that happening yet here? And wondering what that means for ngrok's future.
For ngrok, that story makes a lot of sense, and it's one that we actually tell to our customers, is that ngrok is a piece of software infrastructure that integrates many different components into one. What you used to cobble together for an ingress story was a layer firewall and a web application firewall,
Exactly.
caching layer, an API gateway, an ingress controller, a load balancer. And what we're seeing in the ingress space and what we help our customers deploy is an integrated solution that takes all of those pieces and unifies them into one package. When we speak about ngrok as the unified ingress platform for developers, that is really what we're speaking about, is this consolidation of different components into a single solution that doesn't require you to mix and match as many different pieces to really cobble together something to create a complete ingress story. The latest piece that we've just added ourselves is functionality for essentially API gateways we've added to the product. Not to be confused with the Gateway API support. But we've added a whole bunch of functionality that previously you would have needed to outsource to an API gateway into our unified platform.
So I noticed you didn't use the P word, platform. Well, you did just at the end
I
here.
did. That's true.
So do you consider ngrok the entire thing a platform now then?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been our vision from day one, is that ngrok is a platform that allows you to take any of the different pieces of an Ingress story, and instead of deploying different solutions for them, that they are each features within our product that you can turn on and off when you need them. So, for instance, our most recent set of new features that we were just speaking about is support for API gateway functionality. We just released support for essentially global rate limiting, which allows you to rate limit access to any service that you put behind ngrok at a global scale. So this is really about our servers creating a coordinated layer to create rate limiting on a global scale. And we also have added JOT authentication and essentially support for OIDC or OpenID Connect identity providers, mediating and federating identity access out to them to create essentially authentication in front of APIs is really the latest piece that we've added as well.
You guys are just, you're just solidifying this whole thing. It's growing in all directions kind of thing.
It's really exciting, and we're really excited to create that simplified version of Ingress for developers. What we really believe is that networking and even the Ingress story has often been about developers working with the assembly language of networking. We are still requiring developers to think about ports and TLS certificates and essentially these low-level primitives, DNS records and things like that, when developers really want to function at a higher layer, right? They want to be thinking in terms of their application and the functionality that it delivers to them, and not down in the low-level minutia.
Love it.
Yeah.
Alan, we're about out of time. I want you to look at this camera if you can. Tell people where they can go to get started with ngrok and what's kind of the best on-ramp.
Yeah. The best way to get started with ngrok is to go to the website, ngrok.com. All of our developer resources and documentation are there. It's easy to get started just by signing up for a free account. And once you've adopted that functionality, we have pay-as-you-go plans that allow you to start with just what you need and scale your usage as you adopt more.
There you have it. Our first interview live here at KubeCon in Paris. We are jam-packed for the next 3 days, so tune in and stay tuned as we bring on our next guest. Alan, thank you so much, man.
It's a pleasure to be here, Alan.
Enjoy KubeCon. We'll take a quick break. We're going to be back with our next one, as well as Mitch Ashley, Mike Vizard, and the rest of the Techstrong gang. Stay tuned. Hello, everyone. We're back here live in Paris on the show floor of a buzzing KubeCon. As I said earlier, they're expecting about 13,000 people this year. This will be the largest KubeCon ever. And just looking around the floor, you guys are shooting out. I don't know what people can see because some of it's blurred, but it's a very busy floor. I'm joined here by my friend Brian Fox. If you don't know Brian, CTO at Sonatype, co-founder?
Yeah.
Co-founder CTO at Sonatype. I've been interviewing Brian for a long time, 10 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
But beyond his role at Sonatype, Brian's probably one of the most influential, community-involved folks especially on the security side of things, right? Sonatype is you guys a platinum or diamond sponsor, some high sponsor of KubeCon. But Brian, personally, you're involved with OSSF.
That's right.
FinOps.
FinOps, we're involved. Yep. I'm a governing board member of the OpenSSF and number of the committees there as well.
So we're going to talk about Sonatype and we're going to talk about CNCF, but let's first talk about things like OpenSSF, and you're a board member. I mean, there's obviously business reasons why you want to be on the board, but Brian, with you, it's a passion as well. Let's talk about it. I don't mean to embarrass you, but let's talk about that, for a bit. What drives you to be involved like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been since 2011 probably that those of us at Sonatype have been observing this problem with what everybody talks about now, supply chain security. And so we've been on a mission for how many years is that? 13, 14 years at this point?
Yep.
To try to help large organizations do a better job of managing their open source dependencies from a security and license compliance and architecture risk. We know that doing a good job on this can lead to better outcomes for the company, but also makes them much more efficient. So many people think about it's a tax. I have to do this to make things more secure. But we know that that's actually not true, that it unlocks productivity. But the market in general has been very resistant to change. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
And so, the last couple of years, we've been involved with others at the OpenSSF, working with the US government, with CISA, with ONCD, trying to help really, elevate the message, spread the word, and help work with the regulators. After SolarWinds and Log4Shell, a lot of people sat up and paid attention. Unfortunately, not all of that attention was focused in the right area. And so that's what I've been spending a lot of time trying to help shape that policy, help inform the legislators so that we get, sensible legislation that helps us all be better, not punitive legislation that could really undo things.
Well, I remember speaking to you, I guess it was last year. We're here in Paris. And so we shouldn't focus on maybe just U.S. regulatory challenges. But the EU generally is a step or two ahead. They have more of a will, if you will, to do something, but they don't necessarily. And it's not the EU. I think it's all politicians, and I'm here. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help, kind of thing. They don't really understand the issues, right? They have good intentions. But the road to hell is lined with good intentions.
With good intentions.
Right.
Yes. It's true that the legislators in the EU have moved quickly with the Cyber Resiliency Act, the Product Liability Directives, the AI Act. All of that, I think, generally is good. Many of us spent the last year, 2023, trying to help shape and frankly undo a little bit of what the CRA was focused on, because it was focused on potentially punishing the open source maintainers, holding them liable for things that were out of their control. And that just comes down from the misunderstanding of the policymakers. Like from moving the industry forward, trying to hold vendors accountable, I think they were spot on. Right. The problem was you have no leverage over open source maintainers. Outside of your jurisdiction, you can't hold them responsible in the same way. And the danger was potentially that open source could opt out of Europe. It sounds crazy, but people were saying it. People were asking us, for example, at Maven Central, the repo that we run, could you potentially stop our stuff from being downloaded inside of the EU? So it was a very serious thing that I think the policymakers didn't understand at first, and it took a lot of effort to kind of course correct that. So we're within the OpenSSF. We have we're building further relationships with those folks in Brussels this year to try to help educate that. On the US side, ONCD and CISA have been very involved in the community. We've had many summits. In fact, I was just at one 2 weeks ago with CISA, where they convened all of the package repository folks together, and many of the other leaders in prominent foundations, Apache, Eclipse, OpenSSF, to talk about the problem, the sustainable funding challenge that we all face, right? So I think on the US side, they're doing a great job of getting informed. Actual regulatory action is slow at the moment. On the EU, it's almost the opposite. And so we need to kind of smooth those things out, and I think we'll be in a good shape.
Excellent. Good stuff. Good. Got a briefing right here from Ryan. Brian, if you don't mind, let's pivot over now to Sonatype specifically. As you mentioned, Sonatype has been the maintainers of Maven Central for as long as I think there's been a Maven Central, right? And as such, you've been at the forefront of you want to call it DevSecOps, you want to call it now software supply chain security, of this whole movement. What's new? Is there new, right? Because I think part of the issue is you keep fighting that same battle. You keep fighting on the same battlefield.
Yeah.
But there's new
So I think the new thing this year, and it's not new to me really, but it's new to the rest of the market-ish, is the whole push for SBOMs, right? So SBOMs, it was a means to an end for us 11 years ago when we were trying to help organizations. Most of them didn't know what was in their software. Unfortunately, many of them still don't and are struggling with it. On the US side, they've been pushing the SBOM, software bill of materials, if you don't know. It's required for many government sales. The FDA won't even begin to look at approval of a new device without an SBOM as of October, I think, right? So there's a lot of talk pushing that. The legislation in the EU references it as well. So it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just US. And so, what I've observed in just the last year is a major pivot. So about a year ago, I went to some sessions. Everybody was kind of grappling with, why are they making us do this? It's really hard to do this. We don't know how to do this. All for reasons that they would never want to tell their customers. Things like, we don't have anybody that knows how to maintain that software. We don't track what's in it, right? Things that consumers would be horrified about. That was the conversation last year. This year, the conversation is more focused on, okay, I need to produce SBOMs. I need to ask for SBOMs from my vendors. So they've moved from sort of that denial, anger into acceptance. But I think people are still struggling with, okay, now I have all these SBOMs, what am I supposed to do with it, right? And so that's why yesterday we launched the Sonatype SBOM Manager, which is a version of our platform that is focused on people that are procuring software in organizations from many different vendors, and also trying to have a clearinghouse to be able to provide their SBOMs, both from their first-party software, but also from their third-party stack downstream to their customers as well,
Sure.
right? So there's a number of new workflows and use cases that are coming into play. And it's interesting because the scale of this is much larger than even we expected. We're used to organizations managing, tens of thousands of applications, which is a lot, but the biggest organizations, 10,000, 20,000 is fairly normal. We've had those same organizations talk to us about a need to manage millions of SBOMs, which is quite shocking.
Which brings up the point I wanted to make to you. It all sounds copacetic, right? What a great idea. We need to do this. I just want to let this go. I'm not sure if this gets picked up in our mics, but that's loud. But sometimes the devil's in the details, and what I saw, this is coming out of RSA last year. It'll be interesting to see what I see at RSA this year, is sort of a Tower of Babel of SBOMs, right? So compatibility of SBOM formats. Because if Sonatype has their format and Company Z has their format and Company X has their format, and this reminds me, remember when RSS feeds first came out? Yeah, there was RSS 1.0 and 2.0 and Atom and all these different formats. And so if you had an RSS feeder, if you weren't able to read all the different RSS formats, you needed 6 different readers. Yeah. Until a company called FeedBurner, if you remember, FeedBurner normalized the RSS feeds. Do we have anything that's going to normalize the SBOMs?
Yeah, I mean, that's a use case of our tool. But there's really 2 main standards for SBOMs. It's SPDX, which is a Linux Foundation project, and then Cyclone DX, which is an OWASP project. We've been involved with Cyclone since the 1.0. Sonatype contributed the first security profile extension for it, for example, because specifically I didn't want to invent our own bespoke
because that
protocol.
Doesn't help the cause.
That's right, it doesn't help the cause. And so there's really just those 2 main, and I think everybody has come to accept that at this point, and pretty much I think all the tools are both able to consume and emit the different SBOM formats. So it's a little bit of extra work, but it's sort of a solved problem at the moment for people. So I don't think you need to get too worried about that. I don't see any other standards coming along anytime soon. We're well
I hope
past
not.
that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's good news. Look, we've gone almost this whole interview. We haven't mentioned AI.
Yeah, I was wondering when you were going to ask.
I have to.
Yeah.
I say AI, we get like money or something. I don't know. What role is AI going to have on S-bombs and so forth?
Oh, it's interesting. The conversation around S-bombs is sort of, fragmented in a sense, and people are talking about crypto bombs, cloud bombs, AI bombs, right? Because you need to be able to potentially document and disclose what the training set went into the models, right? So I think the bill of materials concept is here to stay, and there's going to be many different extensions for different areas. We've seen many of our customers asking us to help them manage the AI usage within their products. So, and from my perspective, it looks very much like 10, 15 years ago in open source, where we would talk to policymakers and they would say, we have a policy against it, we're not using it. And then you go and look at what's in their applications or talk to the developers, and it's open source is everywhere. Well, the same exact thing is happening with AI and LLMs right now. So about a month or so ago, we added some new capabilities to help detect and recognize LLM, AI components, AI REST calls, and be able to surface those so that then the governance engine we have in our platform can help the policy folks in charge kind of reason about it. So AI, is getting into the applications in a fairly large way that many people don't realize. I think the AI aspects of the whole industry will certainly help. The generative AI parts can help. With some of the S-bombs, filling out descriptions that are rational. It's really good at those things. If you have a component, but you're not sure what the category is or how to describe it in the S-bomb, you can use AI techniques to be able to help massage some of those things. Same thing in terms of trying to interpret it. So I think it's going to be, secretly underneath the hood in both the generative, the export and the import of these different formats as we're sort of, hanging around the periphery of the formats and what the humans can do.
Love it. Brian, we're about out of time. Sonatype.com, of course, is the website for Sonatype.
Sonatype.com, that's right.
Where are any other kind of websites you want to put in people's minds regarding the OpenSSF?
The OpenSSF.org, yeah. I mean, we didn't touch on the State of the Software Supply Chain report. That's an enduring one.
When's that coming?
In October. This year is the 10th year.
That's right.
It's going to be huge. And, a lot of the research that we've done over the last 10 years is still completely relevant. We tend to take a different look at the industry every year. So we're going to be going back and looking at a lot of those key findings and trying to update them, summarize them. So the team's already hard at work on that.
Very cool.
Trying to get that updated. You can look at all of the past 9 years of reports at sonatype.com/SSCR.
We'll see you at RSA.
That's right.
We'll see you at the Open Source Summit coming up. I want to say June in Seattle, is it? Or April in Seattle?
There's one in June. There's also one in a couple of weeks. April in Seattle.
I think we're going to be...
That's right.
What are we doing here?
I'm going to be everywhere. I'm going to DevNexus. I'm going to VulnCon.
Yeah, no, you're great. God bless you.
That's right.
I pick my spots. Anyway, Brian, thanks for all you do for the whole community and continued success with Sonatype.
Thank you.
Brian Fox from Sonatype, as well as board member OpenSSF and a whole bunch of other things here live on Techstrong TV. We're in Paris. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. We're back here live in Paris on the busy, buzzing show floor of KubeCon. I am really happy to introduce our next guest. We've been covering JFrog in DevOps for as long as I'm doing DevOps.com. March is 10 years. 10 years already.
Oh, yeah.
And if you've watched us, we always have on Shlomi Ben-Chaim, my friend who's the CEO at JFrog. We've had Yoav Landsman many times. My good friend Fred Prince, those are the three co-founders. We've had Stephen Chin. We've had countless people from JFrog. But this is the first time we've had this woman right here. And I will tell you a dirty little secret. She's really the power behind JFrog. She's their CRO. Her name is Tali Notman, and I'm thrilled to have Tali here with us. Hey, Tali, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much. I can get used to it, all these compliments.
Yeah, no, don't let it go to your head. We'll keep it now. So, Tali, let's start with kind of your JFrog journey, right? You've been with JFrog, what, about 11 years, 12 years?
Well, you won't believe it. It's been 14 years now.
14 years.
Yes.
Almost
Since
from the beginning.
Right. Since the very beginning of the commercial, the go-to-market journey. This is where I joined.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And your journey from JFrog has seen you kind of take you and your family from Israel, move to the Bay Area, though when are you ever home with running around? But
Right.
I mean, you more as much as any of the other people I mentioned symbolize really the success
Thank you for
of
that.
JFrog.
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that it symbolizes is that I'm a follower. I'm a follower of my co-founders, my CEO, and for the good reasons. The success comes second. The first thing that comes is really the people and their values and what they bring. And I followed them from the previous company into JFrog. And not only that, as you mentioned, right, I follow them between, moving from one country to another. And 14 years later, who would believe that this is where we are at?
It's been an amazing journey. An amazing journey.
Definitely.
But I've always told Shlomi this, I have a good seat. Not today, this is not as comfortable, but I have a good seat of the DevOps world.
Yes.
And I get to talk to a lot of all the companies in DevOps. For my money, JFrog's culture that they've built, and it starts with Shlomi and comes down. The culture at JFrog is really, when they talk about the frogs,
Right.
they talk about that feeling of we're on a mission together.
Yes.
It's very strong there.
And my personal story is a little more unique than you can find in the market because I actually moved from HR to sales first time with JFrog.
Really?
That's really the story, yes. And I think that one of the special thing about it is that it's all about people. So I'm here now at KubeCon following a few weeks of events, as you mentioned, right, traveling quite a lot. But the last weeks I was hosting our top customers events in Europe and in the US, speaking with our top customers, hearing what is it that they have to share with us. And it's all about relationship building.
Yes.
But from there to last night, Frogs and Friends, hosting the community leaders together with you, definitely.
That was an amazing event.
Thank you. And it's all about here getting the opportunity to share the highlights of our roadmap, hear the feedback from the audience, and now here in this exhibition hall to hear the pains and the challenges of the users is something that drive our growth. This is what really fuels our growth. So it starts with this value of people to people and the relationship and being a good listener to what are your pains, what are your needs, and then from here, put the investment in the right areas to meet your commitment to your audience.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
But that's kind of the secret sauce behind JFrog. You're not supposed to tell anyone.
Oh, yeah.
But it's true because it is a very community-led, customer-focused kind of organization. As part of that, you guys recently did a study of kind of what were the priorities, what were the aims, the goals, the technologies that customers wanted to, have more success with, more involvement with.
Yes.
Tell us about it a little.
Yeah, so there are, I mentioned before being a good listener and collecting the feedback and understanding the needs. One of the additional things that we've done is that we met with CIOs, of course, our customers, but we actually reached out to our partners on the banking side, the research side of the bankers, and we asked them to share with us the survey of 2024 of what is CIO's top of mind, right? And the amazing thing, and we said, again, my team analyzed the results of this survey by 6 or 7 different banks. And part of what I was looking is to figure, eventually the audience that we have here at KubeCon will get priorities from the top as well, right? This will come from the C-level, the CIOs. We wanted to understand what is top of mind for them. And Alan, this was music to my ears. Everything that JFrog put the investment in the past 5 years is in full alignment with what is top of mind for these CIOs. And I'm talking about the platform play, right? The end-to-end DevOps solution, the end-to-end software supply chain management solution. I'm talking about the cloud and multi-cloud strategy of the CIOs. I'm talking about security is a key, definitely a key for their success. And now these days, AI, right? Definitely.
Everything is AI. You know, we are, and I haven't announced that here, but we're working on a big project. Mitchell Ashley, who's right off camera, heads our research, a research study on what we're calling DevOps Next. Yes. And it's exactly what you're saying is 10 years ago when I started this, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when I first got involved in DevOps, there were a lot of point solutions that were cobbled together to make it kind of work, but it didn't work seamlessly. So you had Artifactory, and you might have been using Maven, and you might have been using Jenkins, and all of these things. What we're seeing now is the maturation, the maturing of the space, where you need that end-to-end platform. Correct. People don't want to cobble together like a mishmash.
Yeah.
And this is the state of the art. And now on top of that, you get this whole cloud native.
Oh yeah. But you know what's interesting? The interesting thing that is coming from this survey, and what we also hear from the field, is that they know, these CIOs, they know that they are going to adapt even more tools, especially, by the way, in the domain of infrastructure and security.
Yeah.
But here's the amazing thing. 95% of them are saying that they are going to adapt more, but search for ways to how to consolidate. So if you are, and looking at the security space as an example, if you have a security platform that you're able to provide me the end-to-end solution on my DevSecOps journey, great. And part of our, again, support to this community, to these customers, is really to give them this end-to-end solution. Definitely.
So what they want is more functionality, more feature set.
Less vendors.
But less providers.
Yes.
Right, providers. We don't want, because it just introduces too much complexity into the whole system.
Yes.
And look, again, this is part of the journey. I talk at RSA in 2 months. We're going to be discussing this at the DevSecOps thing, which is DevOps is DevSecOps. DevSecOps is DevOps.
Yeah.
So you mentioned CIOs. A lot of people at home they think of KubeCon, they think of a lot of DevOps software, open source, some of it is free. It's downloadable, I get my hands on it and I use it. And that kind of lends itself to a bottom-up kind of sale.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, in talking to people like you, is these platform sales and stuff are much more top-down.
Correct. But here's the thing, Ellen. And you know, last night when I attended the Frogs and Friends, some folks asked me, well, you are JFrog CRO, why are you here? What's in it for you, the community, the developers? And my answer is very simple. First of all, as we mentioned at the beginning, I was raised by open source people, right? Frederick Simon and Yoav Landman. That's first and most of. But it's really eventually, even if I'm not looking at it as what is the right sales motion. For me, going back to people, if I want to enable the right solution for those who has the pain, I need to be able to open the doors for them from the top down and bottoms up. And this is how I look at it. And therefore, you will see that JFrog is investing in the platform, not to just be able to bring a good pitch for, we have an end-to-end solution. Each one of our teams, each one of the solutions, we are looking at them as best of breed, making sure that they are top in the industry. And with this approach, you're able to answer the need and the concern of the C-level, but also provide solid products for the field. It works together, in my view.
Absolutely. So it's top down, bottom up, and meets in the middle, and it all goes hopefully well.
Yep, yeah.
Speaking of that, look, I'm sure our audience knows, JFrog was one of the first public DevOps companies, right? That went public.
That's right.
How has that changed your job?
Well, I mentioned before that this is a 14 years journey, but the last 3, now almost 4 years since we went public, I would tell you that I think that number one thing is the fact that you know that everything, that the responsibility you had so far, and I always took, don't get me wrong, I always took my responsibility very seriously.
I know you did.
But at this point where you have all these investors that are actually trusting you, and you are responsible on a quarterly reporting and a quarterly commitment, this makes the level of my commitment to JFrog, to the success of the customers, even definitely higher. But it also brings, part of what I find is that to our customers, it actually brings more trust. You know, Ellen, these days, everything is about trust.
Yes.
And the fact that you are not anymore a private company and you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, they know that we are there to support them in this journey all the way to infinity. So this is the privilege that I have when I know to say, to tell again, our users, our customers, hey, JFrog has a really good back. Definitely a great experience, actually. Yeah.
I want to ask you another area.
Yeah, sure.
So you mentioned you weren't always a salesperson. Now, with salespeople, there's different schools of thought.
Yeah.
One is salespeople are born, not trained. Another is salespeople are trained, right? Anybody could be a salesperson.
Would you guess me? My type?
No.
You're
you
not going to
kind of
guess?
break the mold. I think you're born. My personal opinion,
Yeah.
you're born.
All right.
But you did it. You were an HR person, as you mentioned.
Yes.
Switched over to sales. And it's one thing to be a salesperson. Just because you're a good salesperson as a born salesperson, sales doesn't mean you're a good sales manager.
Yes.
That's also a different set of
Right.
skills. How has that been for you, making that switch to sales and also managing a global sales team for a public company?
Right. So I'll tell you a little secret. When Shlomi offered me, my CEO, to join JFrog, at the beginning, I told him, you are 5 people. Why do you need an HR manager, right? What do you need me for? And then I joined him to really support him with some leads he got from Java 1 back in the days. When finally, he made the formal offer of me staying in sales, I told him, no, I'm not. And the reason was because for me, it was a no-go to be in a space where, you know what many people think when you say salesman or saleswoman, right? And this is not so much aligned with my values. And then when I told him that, he said, why do you think I want you for this role? That's exactly the reason why. You know, Ellen, in our codex, our codex is the set of values of JFrog. Mm-hmm. One of the values is community and customer happiness.
Yeah.
And when we chose this value, it took us really time, okay? And it was, by the way, raised by the team, by the frogs, as we call them. And when we were looking for what is it that we feel, it was not about customer success or customer satisfaction. It was about customer and community happiness. And for me, this is the only reason that I managed to take this move and move from HR to sales, was because I knew that this company, these people, are treating, first of all, the people, and only then the business.
Right.
Now, you're right. It's one thing to be a standalone,
an individual contributor.
Right, in this role. It's a different thing when you need to manage the entire organization, and especially as the level of complexity is definitely rising with becoming a public company. But if I wouldn't have, that's the truth, the support and the ecosystem of all frogs around us, and the connection from the understanding of the commitment from the product side all the way to the financial side, I will be very honest to tell you, it's not a one-man show.
No,
not at all.
It takes a whole bunch of frogs.
Oh yeah, a whole bunch
of frogs. A village of frogs.
Right. But when I'm sitting with our product team, and I know that when they plan the roadmap, it's not about, oh, we know best. It's about collecting the feedback, right? Getting the information and the needs from the field, from our customers. I know that they feel the pain that my customers feel. I know I'm in good hands. I know I can manage it. I know I can go through this challenge.
Well, if you're a JFrog customer, you're in good hands here with Tali. Tali, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I know you're busy. It's a crazy event here.
It's a
But
great one.
you know what? As they say in J-Frog, may the frog be with you.
May the frog be with us all. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
you for that.
Tali Nachman, a CRO J-Frog, live at KubeCon. We'll be back in a minute with another guest.
Hey everybody, Mitch Ashley here at KubeCon in Paris 2024. Taking over a little bit for Alan. He's been doing some interviews and I'm jumping in and meeting with some fantastic people. One of which is Cheryl Hung, who's with ARM. Welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to be here.
Good to have you. Tell us about what you do at ARM.
So at ARM, I'm the Senior Director of Ecosystem within the infrastructure line of business. So that means ARM in data centers, cloud, telco, networking.
And that's really growing. I mean, I see more and more ARM in the data center, ARM in the cloud.
It's the fastest growing part of ARM. ARM is very dominant in mobile phones and mobile devices already, but cloud and of course AI, the whole topic of this conference, it feels, are huge drivers for ARM.
Very
so
big.
really happy to be here.
I'm curious, so you have some connections back though into CNCF before you were with ARM, right?
Indeed. I actually used to work for CNCF a few years ago. I used to lead the end user community as the VP of ecosystem in CNCF. So I care a lot about, not just good technology, but the community, making sure that it's very easily accessible and very usable, and supporting people from whatever big or small organizations or individuals to come and be part of the community.
It's nice to have that continuity when you move to ARM and bringing all those relationships and that knowledge, that experience with you.
It's definitely like one of the things I love about this community is we're all friends here. It doesn't matter where you work, doesn't matter what you're doing today, but the relationships that people form here have lasted, beyond what their company's doing, and they really maintain that.
Every
so it's
KubeCon,
great.
at least one person says that too.
Yeah.
So I think it is really true. It is a community.
I mean, the first KubeCon that I came to was Berlin in 2017. I'm going to say it was 1,500 people. I was here on a diversity scholarship, so I knew nobody. Much smaller conference. Obviously, a lot of energy and buzz, but at the time it was still like, Kubernetes and maybe a handful of other things.
Yeah,
and
it's
now you
moved
look
from
at it,
kind of
look at this,
Kubernetes conference to really being full cloud,
exactly.
cloud native.
Yeah, now
distributed computing.
Kubernetes is so established and solid, and that at the time it was still like, is Kubernetes even gonna be a real thing? So I'm very, very gratified, to see how this community's grown.
Well, so three things I'd love to talk with you about. I'd love to hear more about how ARM is doing in the cloud, because more and more I hear those kind of conversations happen on the infrastructure side. Open source project adoption of using ARM, and then also, of course, AI. You can't go 5 minutes into a conversation without talking about AI, but very legitimately, I mean, with ARM and AI projects. So choose the order. You can talk about whatever you want.
Let's go from the top.
Okay.
So, last KubeCon, Oracle announced that it was offering millions of dollars in cloud credits for ARM servers. So offering these to CNCF projects. And the goal here is really to enable CNCF projects to experiment with ARM servers, to test, to deploy. And the goal is really for all of the projects eventually to be multi-architecture. So independent of what your end users are using, today, you should be neutral towards what architecture, and you should try and support as broad a range of end users as you can. So this announcement that we made with Oracle was really a way for us to show that this is something that we want our community to support and to take advantage of. So part of my goal of being here today is to talk to people and tell them what are you doing with these cloud credits? Can we help you? Can we do anything for you to make it easier for you to access those? That's one of my main.
So how's it gone
goals,
since the announcement? How's that adoption happening? What do you see happening?
It's picking up.
Yeah.
The challenge, of course, is ARM is obviously a smaller player so far in the cloud native
It's
space.
this thing called momentum too, right?
But momentum, exactly, yeah.
you're gathering more momentum as
Exactly.
you do this.
And that actually takes me to the second topic you mentioned, the open source adoption. We're very, very proud to say that more than 80% of the graduated projects support ARM. That is huge. That is not where we were 3 years ago. And we would love to get that to 100%. So the maintainers, the TOC, we're really talking to members of the community on how we can get that number to 100%. Part of that, supporting through things like cloud credits. Part of it supporting the maintainers and the community directly. But it's a significant achievement. Bear in mind, ARM is not a software company, right?
Yeah.
A few years ago, ARM is like purely in chips and computer hardware. So for ARM to actually make this stance and say, you know what, the software matters. And when it comes to software, open source software really matters. That is a big change for ARM, a big cultural mind shift. So I'm very, very proud of the company for that.
Let me ask you then. So is it? I'm going to be simple answer. You tell me if it's this simple. I'm guessing it's not. Is it just getting projects to distribute their binaries in ARM and Intel and whatever chip formats, or are there more things about how you incorporate design into your software to take advantage of different use cases for ARM?
So both I would say. On one hand, recompiling to ARM is actually very simple. ARM's put a lot of effort into making the compilers, you basically flip a switch and in theory it should all work. Of course, that, last little bit is where all the effort is. To
There's
make
always
it all
something,
just
but
work.
yes,
Exactly.
anything like that, sure.
So there is a lot of work still left in terms of testing and making sure that software works together in the way you would expect it to. So, I'm not saying that it's an easy task. There's definitely still work to do there. And the second part is on particular workloads. So, of course, the hot topic of the day is AI. And AI is driving a lot of the demand for ARM and ARM in the cloud. In fact, I gave a keynote at a different conference last week where I said, if you're not on the AI hype train, you need to get on it now. I was a little bit of a cynic myself, but, seeing the momentum here, seeing how AI is really being used to solve these problems that would have been too difficult or too expensive before, it just goes to show, that's where the hype train is. And obviously ARM, in collaboration with some other players like NVIDIA, is a big part of that. So we're doing our best to keep pushing, keep supporting that community and to democratize the access to GPUs and make it easier for people to use them and run them in production.
Great. Are there certain things you need to work with different LLM providers to help them work in an ARM environment? Is that important at all, or that's kind of a little higher up in the stack that's just not as big an issue?
A surprising amount of it just works. A lot of it is really, really, just works, and that's really a tribute to all of the closed and open source, engineers who've been working on this over the last few years. There are obviously some things, not so much in the data, but in the training and the inference that need some work and need some polish. But honestly, the biggest challenge right now is all of the layers above it. So things like Kubernetes. We saw from the keynotes today that actually there's still a lot of challenges in how you manage those GPUs and share those resources effectively and fairly and cost effectively from a business side, and keep your users happy because obviously they want the fastest access possible. And so there's an absolute ton of those. And I'd say the other big bit that we're missing right now is actually in the ecosystem. We don't have necessarily the talents. Policies are changing really fast. Governments are figuring out what to do about this whole AI thing. and the hardware is still difficult to access.
We're
difficult
kind
and
of
very
early on all
expensive.
parts of it. It seems like. I mean,
Exactly.
AI ML has been around for a while, but especially generative AI
Exactly.
is all new
Yeah,
to
yeah,
most
you know.
of us.
You know, it's been around, but it's been around for the very big tech companies who
Right.
have the deep pockets. If we're going to get that out to the widest range of people and companies possible, then we need all these things. We need the money, we need the talent, we need policies to support it, and we need the hardware to be accessible as well. So we definitely have a long way to go, but it's really great to be at the beginning of the journey and, you know, see where we land in 5 years.
Yeah, you do kind of have to be there at the start, you know, to really be part of the whole ecosystem. How about, I'm curious, you know, there's a lot of discussion about domain-specific LLMs, geographically based LLMs that are at the edge. Now we're talking about just Gen AI at the moment. It seems like those are, you know, really particularly great use cases for ARM, as well as, you know, more efficient use of resources, sustainability.
Yeah.
As a big issue
yeah.
around AI, and it's kind of elevating sustainability even more as a topic than it already
Yeah.
is.
100%. ARM has always had this focus on being energy efficient right from the beginning. That was, you know, the goal was these very low energy chips. And that served it very well in mobile devices where, you know, you want to have your battery life for your phone last all day. But it turns out that's also wonderful if you have massive data centers and you're using an enormous amount of energy, then using that energy effectively is super important. So many businesses, you know, almost every business that I'm talking to has sustainability as one of its long-term goals. And one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that you're using your energy. And, you know, it's also good for the company, right? Because energy costs money. You're spending a lot on your cloud resources. So you want to get the most out of them. So it's good for the company, good for the planet, and good for people.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, so wrap up with kind of more of a you question. As a veteran coming back to KubeCon, I've gone multiple years, multiple events. Is there any particular meetup or group or event or part of KubeCon like is the top of the list of I always show up at the Wednesday, whatever, you know, or is there something like that for you that you really enjoy participating in the most?
I would say on a personal level, I run the Cloud Native London meetup. I've run it since 2017, so gosh, 7 years now I've been running this meetup. We have over 8,000 members, and I always love to meet the meetup organizers from different countries. So, you know, the one in Paris, the one in the Nordics, you know, the one all over. And I love meeting up with these folks because they're always really passionate about getting people together, you know, learning new tech, sharing what they know. So for me, I think getting in touch with the other ambassadors is key. And then, yeah, just hanging out with people. Yeah,
That's great.
I think it's always good to meet people you don't know as well.
You meet people you don't know, and you know, COVID's somewhat in the rearview mirror for us, but I'm still meeting people I've only met online, and like
Yeah.
just someone walked up today and like, hey, I finally get to meet you in person. We're still
Yeah.
making that personal connection.
Just 2 minutes ago, I saw someone I knew, and I was like, "Oh, after this is done, I might have to catch up."
I gotta go
Yeah,
run
exactly.
and catch them. Well,
Exactly.
it's been fantastic talking with you, Cheryl, and we wish you the best. And I'm excited what ARM is doing in the industry and the adoption level. You know, I have one more question if I could ask.
Yeah,
you.
go for
I
it.
have this theory. I don't know how big of an impact it has. You know, being a developer in my background and long-term Apple users, when Apple moved over to an ARM-style chip, at least that instruction set, it seems like that kind of brought a whole new developer community into the ARM world, needing
yeah.
ARM software, all the things you're talking about, of course, which helps when you move it into the cloud and into the data center. So it seems like moves like that, where developers are working and the software they're working on, seems like one of the things that will help accelerate that. Is that true?
It is very true. It's actually a little bit embarrassing how often I hear, you know, "Oh, I moved my company to ARM because I wanted to use my Mac with my fancy new M2."
Hey, if that's what gets them there, right?
I'm like, sure, yes, you know, that's great. I actually used to work for Apple before ARM, so I've
Okay.
also seen that from both sides. But it just goes to show that ARM's growth is everywhere, and it's wonderful. And it also really goes to show how developers are leading the charge. A lot of things, sustainability might not be something the engineers care about day to day, but they care about their battery life. So we're all heading in the same direction.
Excellent. Well, Cheryl, it's been a lot of fun. Cheryl Hung, who's with ARM. If you want to know something about what's happening in the cloud, or CNCF, or Apple, or ARM, not to overload too many expectations. It's been great talking with you.
It's been
Appreciate
wonderful.
you coming by.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much, Mitch.
You too. Have a great show.
Thank you.
Everybody, we will be right back with our next fantastic guest, just like Cheryl, and I hope you stay tuned. We're just getting started here at KubeCon in Paris. See you in a minute. Hey everybody, welcome back. We are here at KubeCon, Cloud Native Con in Paris, KubeCon Europe. And we're talking with a lot of fascinating people. We're of course talking Kubernetes, but bigger than that, we're talking about cloud and cloud native, cloud computing, all the aspects of that, all different parts of the stack. And we're joined by today Chuck Dubuque, who is with Red Hat. Welcome, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you. And I work for Red Hat. I'm a head of product marketing for Red Hat OpenShift.
Very nice.
Yep.
Great. So when you and I kind of talked a little bit before, It's like, when are we going to talk about AI, right? Because you know it's going to come up.
It always comes up.
Why don't we just start there? What's happening, kind of the AI conversations that you're having at Red Hat and here at KubeCon?
Red Hat has been doing, with OpenShift, we've been doing predictive AI for almost 10 years. And seems like old hat nowadays, but everything from self-driving cars to machine vision, training the models, deploying them. The new excitement is around generative AI, and so we've created actually a product around that called OpenShift AI. We're very creative with our names, but the goal is to help customers who've already started down the cloud native pathway for development, and even those who haven't yet, to use OpenShift as a consistent platform across the entire life cycle of that development of an AI-based application.
Very good. Oh, one thing about OpenShift is, it's used in some very big infrastructures, very large application, telecom, a lot of different industries. I would imagine that's some good experience to bring to the larger kind of KubeCon audience and to the AI community as well.
Yeah, and some of our biggest customers are here in the show floor. We're going to be one of our largest customers, Goldman Sachs, will be doing a keynote talking about virtualization on Kubernetes. But yeah, even I think the 10 years or so that OpenShift has been powered by Kubernetes, we have built a platform that scales really well. In fact, our corporate parent, IBM, uses OpenShift to build its foundational model, which is watsonx AI. So you've got a platform that can scale if you can build one of these huge AI models, like ChatGPT and others that are coming out. Most of our customers are going to be using watsonx AI or another off-the-shelf commercial or open source foundational model, and then they'll be needing to train it on their data. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're finding is that you need to bring your cloud native development team now to where your golden data assets live. The stuff you want to train it on probably lives behind your firewall in a data center, or maybe you went all in on cloud, but your particular golden data set, data source is in Amazon and your rest of your team is working in Azure or something like that. So the first thing that we see in an AI development pathway is stand up a cloud native platform. And in our case, we would love it for it to be OpenShift, but a Kubernetes with all of the services built in so that you can take that foundational model and train it to your data. And that's something that you got to do it close to your data. Sending all that data back and forth over the internet doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And a lot of that proprietary knowledge is stuff that you want to keep very secure and know that not endangering any of that while you're doing the training.
I'm guessing the few things that you've mentioned
Yeah.
answer this question I want to ask. But given that, IBM, OpenShift, you've been working with AI for a long time. I think folks that may be newer to it or kind of starting on the generative AI, you don't realize it's really a data management challenge, and it has its own workflows and pipelines that could be happening in parallel with other DevOps and software deployment pipelines, but they aren't always, one for one. That training a new or introducing a new LLM or a new model can happen with a release, without a release, in parallel.
Right.
What are some of the lessons that you feel like you've learned doing this for a while?
A great example was in the oil and gas industry. We had a customer who was doing a lot of data analysis using AI models for, interpreting all the data that they collect from sonar and from other data sources. Their data scientists ran on their own laptops, which had $1 million worth of data on it.
All production ready, I'm sure. Just
each of them had tweaked their own system so that the model worked on their laptop and not on somebody else's. So one of the first things that those kinds of companies benefited from was the standardization of a single platform. So yes, there's value in having keen insights that are special to you, to your organization. But if your colleague in the next cubicle can't use it, then its value is diminished.
Right.
So that single platform that, yes, you can still access it from a laptop, but it's keeping your data secure so that if you lose your laptop on the airplane, your corporate team is not going to have words with you. Down to the fact that the model you develop is production ready without you having to necessarily build it with production readiness in mind, because your platform engineers have given you known safe paths and guardrails so that you could start with a science project, and if it pans out, it's already meets your supply chain requirements, your regulatory requirements, your standardizations, your corporate policies. And that's, I think, one of the bigger benefits of working with something like OpenShift is that we provide a solid foundation for all of that so that your platform engineers can actually move a little up the stack in terms of setting policies, not putting the plumbing in to support it.
It's one of the nice things both about virtualized and stacked environments and also platform engineering is, you can do the science project on your laptop, but you can spin up sandboxes and science project environments, right? You don't want to necessarily have everything that you're going to have in production, but you want that transition to go, all right, to go over this next step. Right. I don't have to redo everything to get it ready and make all the mistakes that I always make each time going through, plus just the effort. Just use that part of your kind of supply chain process to get to that production ready state.
Yeah, and AI is moving so fast right now. ChatGPT today is better than it was 3 months ago.
Yeah, Claude comes out and poof, everybody talks about that now. And
right,
and
Claude
3, Claude 4.
So right now there's real business value to being constantly releasing fast, trying to catch that innovation wave, because you are seeing measurable improvements in results, almost every day. So having the ability to keep retraining your model, maybe switch out the model or move it to the next version of the model, get that quickly into the hands of your customers, that has real business value. And so customers that maybe haven't gone in fully with cloud native practices and the cultural surroundings of that, that's something that on our consulting side, on our training side, we help a lot of our customers with the cultural aspects of that. How do they move those practices from the team that manages the web app that is super dynamic, but the rest of the company is a little bit behind the times, to now we've got to bring that into where we keep our database administrators and where the big iron is that holds the data that we want to tap to train the model. Now we've got to bring people with that mindset and that culture into that environment. So it's not just the technology, it's the people, the tools, the training, the mindsets, and the learnings that come from that. And we're seeing that sort of accelerating now with AI as the driver.
It seems like we kind of added a whole nother layer of complexity to that with, yes, it's data, but it's distributed data, distributed models,
Yeah.
both our own and third-party services, and what are you giving them access to, and is that it being integrated into their own models, or is it a service you're running? It's kind of the whole data management. Where is it?
Yes.
Can you keep track of it? It's now even that much more complex.
Yeah, and when you think about things like software supply chain, software bill of materials, now you've got to think about data bill of material for your AI model.
That's a really good point.
What's the training? Have you ensured that it's learning what credit card numbers look like, not learning what your customers' credit cards are? And those are things that are important to track through the process. And again, we try to make it easier with more robust telemetry. We work upstream in the open telemetry project here in Kubernetes to make it so that you can get that instrumentation, the data points you need to answer those questions of provenance and what was trained against what, and where did this model come from. Those are just as important as which version of C++ compiler you used and which libraries you used to make an application.
I think we should take the data bill of materials idea and create the next, instead of find my device, find my data.
Yes.
And tell me where that stuff is.
Yeah, and I think we're here in Paris in Europe, and Europe is really at the forefront of those regulations.
Yeah, they very much are.
I live in the U.S. GDPR effects are just starting to become felt where they're old hat in Europe, and I know that regulations about what of my data personally or otherwise can be used to train a model are going to be very important regulatory hurdles globally soon and very soon in Europe for showing that you've trained your models in compliance, in good faith, and can document that.
Very good. Well, any other highlights? Anything you're looking forward to that you're like, hey, I've gone to this member meetup session or this talk or whatever?
Yeah, we're like I said, we've got some great customers talking at the keynotes, and I'm personally excited about the recent release of OpenShift 4.15, which has got all sorts of new features for our customers. But you can pretty much check out everything at www.redhat.com.
.redhat.com. Good. There's a lot of good stuff on there too.
Yep.
I'm particularly interested. I have to talk to you after about this whole data management and AI and models. And
yeah,
I think it's very underappreciated. I know there are people who appreciate that problem,
right,
but it's a massive challenge. It's a real big one. Well, Chuck, how do you say your last name?
Dubuque.
Dubuque, like Iowa.
It's like Iowa.
I wanted to be able to say that. So, Chuck, it's good talking with you. Have a good rest of the conference. We're just getting started here. So
yeah, definitely.
Hang on, grab that coat. Just
thanks.
Keep going. Okay. All right. Thanks for having Chuck on with us today from Red Hat, talking about AI and OpenShift and Kubernetes and all kinds of great things, data, along with all of that. So we have more great interviews just like this one with Chuck, and we look forward to having you on. We may play a little bit of a video here, but we'll be back in just a few. So hang tight, stick to the same bat channel, bat station. We'll see you in a few. Hey everybody, welcome back. We are at KubeCon Paris, KubeCon Cloud Native Con 2024 Europe. The buzz, just the energy, and number of people here is kind of insane. I was just talking with one of our friends here, and it seems like we're at a next level of this conference. It's really kind of exploded in a good way. So it's great to be talking with great friends and colleagues from the industry. Speaking of which, I'm joined by Ur, who is with our friends at MinIO, Object Storage.
Yes, Object
We've
Storage.
talked to you and Jonathan and folks at different times, kind of keeping up on what's happening. Well, first tell us about your role at the company at MinIO.
Ur Tigli, I'm the CTO at MinIO, and MinIO is a high-performance distributed object storage, all about enterprise object storage in the modern world. And today's workloads, AI and KubeCon here in Paris is amazing for us because it's our best conference. And from this is the first day. So the first day I've been at the booth for about 2 hours, and we got more than 300 people stopping by at our booth just by the 2 hours that's been, and it's nonstop since
Yeah,
morning.
it's not even, well, it's barely lunchtime already.
I just walk away to meet with you here. Like, it's been crazy busy at the booth. There's a huge interest for Minayo. We've been quite popular. Minayo has been around for about 10 years now. We're going to be, at the end of this year, it's going to be our 10th year. It's been an open source company doing S3 based object storage. We use S3 APIs in the front end, full stack enterprise grade object storage. And we just announced last week our Minayo Enterprise product. It's 6 products put together from our learnings from our largest enterprise customers using AI workloads mainly. We've been always a popular choice for data workloads. And with that, we have built 6 of these products to enable enterprise customers to do KMS on their own, to do load balancing on their own in front of Minayo software, to do their own catalog database, which all the namespace of Minayo can be reflected on this database, and we give them a GraphQL fast search of different objects that they have in there. When they grow from hundreds of objects, thousands of objects to millions of objects, this becomes critical for them to be able to understand what they have on their data infrastructure. So this is our inflection point in our growth of the company, because we are going from different deployments in enterprise to providing them different software products to manage it at large scale. We have huge customers now going into hundreds of petabytes, and they're planning exabytes of deployment with us. So it's critical for us to provide them the tools to manage that. And that's why we are excited to be here, because of this announcement last week that with Minayo Object Storage, Enterprise Object Storage for enterprise customers. And KubeCon is our best conference ever. Like, for many years, it's been our best conference, and the crowd here loves Minayo, and they like to use Minayo in different projects, from smallest projects to large deployment with large enterprises.
Now, being a fellow CTO, you know, you really do appreciate what it takes to go from a startup 10 years ago,
Absolutely.
introducing a product, and trying to support very large scale, very large enterprise service providers,
Yep.
whatever it might be. It isn't just more of the same. It's new problems get introduced. How do I
Totally.
manage all those objects? How do I manage the security of them, the key management of it?
Exactly.
How do I, maybe they aren't all provisioned the same way or
Exactly.
configured the same way. Where are they, right?
Exactly. Where are they? So they are everywhere. We have enterprise customers doing deployments on Kubernetes. We have enterprise customers doing, the same customer can be doing the deployment on VMs or bare metal. So our goal is to bring all of these deployments under one single pane of glass. I always talk about Minayo's inflection point in its history. 20 years ago, when VMware started with their hypervisor, with ESXi vSphere as the core of the product, it was just hypervisors. They were just making sure that the hypervisor is chosen and the best product. We have been in that phase up till last week. Now, and VMware did what they did with enterprise. They built their vCenter to build and manage everything under their umbrella.
Networking and security.
Networking, security,
Yep.
everything. Minayo is under the same phase, is going through the same phase. We are just in our vCenter inflection point, just like what VMware has grown into after they came up with vCenter and management. We are giving all of our enterprise customers a single pane of glass to manage all their deployments, regardless of where they're running it. They can be running it in a public cloud, on a AKS kind of a service, a Kubernetes service. They can be running on an edge, on a single instance, single node. We can still manage it under this umbrella with Minayo Enterprise Object Storage. That's why Minayo Enterprise is bringing everything together, but also giving these 5 other different components, like a KMS. People don't want to deal with an external KMS in the enterprise world. Yes, there is a CISO organization that has a KMS, but the object storage people, they don't want to do the integration. They want a simple solution for their key management, and we built our KMS with basic key rotation. We have no desire to compete with any KMS product or different companies.
But it's different for data than devices and users.
They want a simple, we
machines.
always implemented the Amazon S3 framework for key management, for encryption, whether it's AWS SSE S3 or SSE KMS. We use that same framework. what we did with this enterprise products, we built our own KMS, and we are providing the KMS to our customers. Or we built a catalog where they can search in this database approach. They can search all of their objects. Or we built something called Cache, Minayo Cache. The Cache product is built because, to your point, we learned from our biggest customers. One of the world's biggest streaming company uses Minayo, and that company needed a lot of caching to feed into the CDNs. The same problem that to this morning I'm talking with the AI folks, the same problem is there as well. And caching will help them to feed into the CDNs for a streaming company, or the AI foundational models needs to be loaded fast. They can do training fast as well, but training is not their main concern. Main concern after they train the model, they want to upload their models into the DGX boxes or into the H100 or whatever as product or a cloud-based product that they're using wrapped around. They want to upload those models fast, and they need Minayo, and they're coming to Minayo for that. And whether you're using some specialized hardware, you don't need any of that to foundational models to be uploaded fast. You need a very fast network and a high-performance object store. And we provide the high-performance push part because of the technology we have, and the networking they need to design for. One customer I was talking this morning, he has a 400 gigabit network, 4 times 100 probably, or 400 natively. I didn't understand if they're doing both, but if they have a 400 gigabit network, they can upload very fast using NVMe technology. Commodity hardware, Minayo software, you can feed any GPU any way you want to do the work, whether for foundational model uploads or you're doing training, doesn't matter. You can get very fast AI data infrastructure with Minayo.
Very good. So just to step back a little bit, I think I asked Jonathan each time I talked to him about this too. Streaming is a really clear example because you can see, very large pieces of data that are getting streamed, distributed out to end users, viewers, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
What are some other perfect uses of object storage versus structured, unstructured, traditional kind of databases?
So streaming, you think that streaming is easy from a theoretical object storage use case, but honestly, learning with this large customer doing streaming, it's very random data. And when you think about streaming as a use case on its own, you think that, it's just streaming of data, it's big blobs of data,
so
origin data.
Next block on the disk, just send it on.
But when you of the media companies that are doing DVR or live to VOD or like video on demand or live video tracking or those kind of applications that they have, whether external or in-house that they make, when they come to storage, they're very random. So it's very critical to explain to, and I try to explain to everybody, why do we need, for a streaming use case, why do we need high-end storage, like NVMe or SSD flash type of storage, QLC, TLC type of storage? You do need it when the numbers are large and all of them are coming to you as a storage origin. That becomes very random I/O profile. So that's the biggest misconception actually with the streaming use case. Yes, streaming of one origin media file is linear or serial, and that could be a really good use case for a big blob of object, but it's not, it's random when you're feeding a lot of them. So that's number one point. Number 2 point, or to answer your question, other use cases which you think of really streaming may not be streaming. We have customers in large enterprises at financial services, and a transactional, a large service company that is doing a lot of transactions, let's put it this way, a West Coast company, and they are doing all of their merchant transaction reporting using our data. So it sounds like a very different use case, but primary storage, they use object storage us. All of their content management, they use us. They started using us, they went from an appliance storage to Minayo as a software and a commodity hardware. They liked this a lot, now they are doing that. One of the other credit card companies using us for their cybersecurity operations or cybersecurity analytics. That's 20 plus petabytes of data that they're collecting, and they're running their analytics on top of us. So that's another use case. We have data infrastructure, large use cases of Hadoop. I've been saying this for 5-6 years, but Hadoop is, and one of the supporters of Hadoop is kind of getting not liked by the industry a lot. So Hadoop, especially HDFS, is in a downtrend, and people are taking out HDFS, putting MinIO with its erasure coding. They're saving from the get-go 50% off, because Hadoop uses 3 copies minimum replication mode, or sometimes 4 if they need an extra. We use erasure coding, which is 1.2 to 1.5, depending on which erasure coding.
Big difference, yeah.
It's a huge difference coming. And
You're talking about petabytes, terabytes. That's a lot of data.
And before joining MinIO, I was at Bank of America, and I was running their infrastructure for storage, server, and data centers. And biggest customers of mine 7-8 years ago was a Hadoop cluster or the Hadoop team. We would get a large amount of customers, like 100 plus nodes in a Hadoop cluster, but the CPU utilization on those clusters were 2%. And talking to customer, everybody has the same experience. A lot of customers buy Hadoop clusters just for their capacity, and they don't use those CPUs. It's, in my opinion, it's waste of CPUs. That's why Hadoop use case is an excellent use case for MinIO, because of the work that Hadoop community did with S3A. S3A is a connector. You change the HDFS connector to S3A, and MinIO runs automatically. No need to change anything else. So that's another use case. I think 1, 2, 3 different use cases, very popular ones.
And that's just the start.
That's just the start for MinIO.
But I think a common thread through all that is when you're doing it at scale, it's a much different problem than doing it at serving half a dozen a minute or something. You know.
Data lakes, there are lots of names for it. Data lake, data warehouse, data lakehouse.
Fabric, data fabric, all that.
Open table formats is very popular, and we are all playing a role in that as well. And that's Hadoop is part of that. With ML, like machine learning, before machine learning, data analytics has been done in many companies. With machine learning, it was ML ops, machine learning. Now with AI, it's AI ops and AI data infrastructure. But the core of it is a data lake. It's some large data store where you keep it, and S3 APIs is the de facto standard with all AI workloads. The new generation, whether it's foundational model tools, to build them, to train them, or to vector databases, underneath them is all object storage. And if you look at them all, it's MinIO. Like there are vector databases, they all document MinIO in their documentation from the start.
Really? That's interesting.
And wow. AI ops, ML ops is changing into AI ops. They're all using. So there's maybe 10-20% of the ML ops, AI ops world that needs a transactional DB for one reason or another to track some of the rest of it can go into an object store easily. So we play a large role in the ML ops, AI ops world, as well as underneath vector databases. And because of that, the tools all use S3 and they come to us. So that's the story for us. Large amount of data lakes. We are Switzerland when it comes to data lakes. You can use Trino, Presto, Dremio type of modern query engines. They all need to do some S3 queries against us. Or you can do external table from Snowflake to Teradata. They all use offloading with NOS in Teradata, old school appliance world, to Snowflake doing external tables on MinIO, and you can run same Snowflake query against us, extension of Snowflake tables.
Well, I'm sorry we couldn't get you going to kind of talk about this. You know, honestly, no, it's a great topic. Bunu data and storage are still sexy.
It
right?
is.
I mean,
in
nothing happens
world.
without it, right? For sure, and especially at the volumes we're talking about.
Yep.
Well, congratulations on the enterprise announcement.
Thank you.
And the compliments that brings to the customers that have been using the product, who maybe don't need all of that yet, but for the folks that do, you know, those kind of things are vital.
One or the other, but like some of them needs all, but they're very useful. They're all solving one specific problem.
Yep, absolutely. Well, definitely stop by the MinIO booth if you haven't already, or check them out online.
Definitely online.
And
Min.io.
Min.io. Thank you very much.
Very simple. We go with simplistic across all of our marketing, websites, cards, everything is very simple.
Bin.io. I think there's a hidden meeting there. I kind of think I get it now. Okay, no, it's great talking to you, and
Thank you so
good
much.
luck with the rest of the show, and congrats on the announcement.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Fantastic guest again. Thanks for being with us for this segment. We have more. We have a full day, a full lineup. We're just getting started, so stay tuned. And if we're replaying a previous KubeCon interview, great, hang tight. We'll be back with you with another live streamed interview in just a minute.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel. I'm back here live. We're back here live at KubeCon. This is by far the busiest show floor I've seen in any KubeCon. I know there's 13,000 people, and I think they're all right here. Luckily, the magic of technology, you're hearing us and seeing us, I hope. And because if you would hear the din of the background noise here is ridiculous. I'm really happy. We're going to be doing a little bit something special here right now. We're going to be doing a DevOps Unbound live kind of panel live at KubeCon. We've got our very special VIP guest, Martin Klaus, who evidently when he travels at events brings his own security. And
Mihaim and Hashib.
Hashib?
We're there.
I'm
hey
not-
guys,
I'm not
thanks for
sure,
keeping us
you know.
safe. We appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We appreciate it. You're good guys.
I don't know. I guess Martin's a high visibility kind of target or something here, huh?
I don't know what you're into, Martin, but I'm glad you've got
This is like
security
something
there.
out of the blacklist or something, you know? But anyway, so this is Martin Klaus from Tricentis. If you've watched any DevOps Unbound episodes, you might have seen Martin on a few of them. But you know, it's funny, it's Zoom, you only see people from here up. He's actually a pretty tall guy. Speaking of tall guys, to my right here is our CTO at Techstrong and Principal Research Analyst, Mitch Ashley. Mitch, thanks for being here.
Always, always.
And we're here. So, DevOps Unbound. Look, we always discuss everything under the sun on DevOps Unbound. But Martin, I wanted to focus today's talk a little bit on what's different about testing and continuous testing in a cloud-native environment versus any other environment.
So first of all, Alan, Mitch, thanks for having me. It's great to finally meet you in person.
Yeah,
After
it's first.
years.
It is. Yeah.
And it's unbelievable, the energy, the vibe, the community of KubeCon. As you mentioned, 13, I think it's actually more than 15,000 people over here.
Yeah.
This place is crazy. It's unbelievable. If you have not been to KubeCon, you definitely need to come here in person and see for yourself. But coming back to your question, what's different? So I've been in cloud native for a long time. I've worked at Red Hat, I've worked in OpenShift and containers and Kubernetes. When Kubernetes is still in at 0.9. And so I would say if you look back over the last couple of years, a lot of things have changed because one of their main objectives of DevOps was to bridge the gap between Dev and Ops and to move applications into production much faster, to deliver more value to business much more quickly than in a traditional waterfall or even an agile model. And so what happens is when you're trying to move faster and you change your process to work more efficiently, to work in small increments, then the application architecture evolves as well, right? We've moved from, monolithic, big web applications to microservices that you can update and scale out much more efficiently. Data has evolved from data at rest to data in motion, and streaming of events has become one way for data and applications to communicate with one another. And so if you think through that, then you also have to think about how does that impact testing and test automation. And the whole notion of quality engineering becomes a lot more important because you have to think about quality from an architecture standpoint, you have to think about quality from an end user standpoint and the experiences to deliver, but you also have to think about how can you ensure quality through the development process as it relates to functional requirements, as it relates to business requirements, as it relates to performance requirements. And a lot of companies are also dealing with security and compliance and governance. So all these things have to be considered, and it cannot be solved by tools alone. You have to think about the process as well. And most important, I would say, is adopting a quality first mindset, and not just move things in production and see if it sticks, but be more thoughtful about how you're building applications, how you deliver it, and ultimately what is the value delivering to end users.
Yeah, I'm curious, listening to your thoughts on that. Thinking about the people that we've interviewed, and just a few of them today already. It's OpenShift Red Hat folks. It's ARM processor and getting more applications on that platform. It's cloud native application company. It's object storage. The number of variables. I mean, there's always been a large number of variables to test for environments. It seems like that's even bigger. I mean, maybe exponentially more complex in this cloud native environment, because there's so many different platforms. I mean, AI, add all that to it.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you just walk around the show floor here, you'll be blown away by how many different use cases and features and capabilities that are enabled on the Kubernetes platform. I think one other aspect that's really important to think about is, testing is everybody's responsibility, or quality is everybody's responsibility, not just the traditional QA folks. It's developers, it's project managers, it's release engineers, it's SREs, and everybody else that's involved in it. But one key difference oftentimes is, and this is something that I hear a lot from my quality engineering counterparts at not just testing companies, but in enterprise, that it's not just about the happy path that you envision as a developer that your users go through. Quality engineering is a lot about finding out what are the edge cases where things might break, what are the environments where you run into a gotcha type situation, and how do we prevent that from happening? Because ultimately, end users all have different environments, different browsers. They log into through their mobile devices, through different network configurations. They may have multiple applications running, and inevitably somebody's going to use the application in a way it was not intended or designed to deal with. And so that's ultimately causing quality issues. And so that's really, I think, what quality engineering needs to be about, is to figure out how can we maximize the footprint of all the things that we're exposing the application to identify those weak points that we need to prevent from happening in the first place.
Martin, one of the trends that I see at Cloud Native Con, KubeCon already, is the move to platforms, right? And I think it's a maturation phase of, we're doing this, Mitch is heading up this report we're doing called DevOps Next, where we're looking at what's next in the gamut of DevOps, right to left, left to right, the whole thing. And one of the trends is instead of cobbling together, you got some.
I feel like I'm on the airplane,
I feel like I'm at the airport. Yeah, I'm ready. I got to go board. See you later.
You're missing your flight.
Yeah, but I think I left my wallet at the TSA booth.
That's right.
But one of the trends is getting away from point solutions that are cobbled together to platforms. And almost like the Russian nested dolls, platforms of platforms. So you can have a continuous testing platform, like a Tricentis, and that has a complete suite of tests optimized for a cloud native environment, for what you're doing. And that has to fit into a larger cloud native platform, that takes up my whole CI/CD, my whole software supply chain type of environment. What's Tricentis doing, both to expand that testing platform, but also to fit into that larger cloud native?
I think the notion of platformization is one of the hottest trends in industry right now. You hear about platform engineering, you hear about developer platforms, you hear about quality platforms, and the main driver for the adoption or the growth of these platforms in history is really like, what can we do to help developers or testers and project teams stay in the flow? Because there's so many things you have to think about, there's so many distractions, there's so many sort of other tasks you have to do during the day, and to stay focused on a particular pull request or a particular project or a particular sort of feature requirement is very hard if you think about all the meetings and disruptions that you're going to deal with every single day. And platforms can help with that, to help you simplify and automate a lot of things so that there's less cobbling together that you have to do on your own. And one thing that is really important, I think also from a Trending standpoint, is reusability. And how can we enable more use cases with quality platforms? And one thing that we see a lot with our customers is that there are not just applications you build in-house in the enterprise, there are applications or SaaS applications you configure and deploy or enhance, or an application you just use. So you'll see the whole gamut of applications that you deploy and configure, that you use across the enterprise, but then also applications that you're extending and building yourself. And how can you deliver an end-to-end quality automation platform that supports all the different use cases between enterprise IT, back office applications like Oracle and SAP, business applications like Salesforce and ServiceNow, and many others, as well as the custom applications that you use internally, but they can also be client-facing, right? And what we found is that a lot of customers are looking for ways to standardize process through a quality engineering framework. They're also looking to standardize on tools and platforms so that enable quality engineers across many different teams to work together with their development counterparts to release applications faster. And so that's kind of like what we're trying to do, to really focus on usability and the end user experience, but also make it easy for people to get started with functional automation, but then expand into data testing, for example, or load testing, mobile testing, and other things that they may need to do for the particular application that they're trying to release.
It really makes the case platforms aren't just for infrastructure. Yes,
No.
that's part of it, but it's
So
platforms up the stack. And
Well, it's horizontally and
Yeah,
vertically
exactly.
is the key to it. And like I said, it's like that Russian nested dolls thing. There's platforms within platforms. But
For
again,
Dune, you got to make it a Dune, plans within plans.
spirals within spirals.
It's just layers, right? Like the networking layers of L1 through L7 might be one analogy to think about what you're doing on the infrastructure layer, what you're doing at the application layer, at the testing layer, and so forth.
Well, at the end of the day, the spice must flow.
Sleeper must awaken, too. But so can I ask the AI
Sure.
question? We haven't talked about AI.
No, it's enough time. Go ahead.
We have an upcoming live session on testing AI in your applications. I'm curious your thoughts, and I wish I had the date on it. We'll get that out to everybody. What are your thoughts about when you incorporate AI into your apps? There's models, there's data, there's training. They kind of have their own flows, even more so than just a database or data source. How do you think about testing in a cloud native world that has AI part of it?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I mean, answer that in 5 seconds.
The whole industry is sort of thinking about that right now because, on the one hand, today, for example, we saw many great use cases for AI models and put them into production, and using LLMs to summarize a live picture of what's being seen, and so also we're seeing the use of AI from a code generation standpoint, right? And there was a recent article from Jyoti Bansal who mentioned that we've shifted the problem from development to QA, and what used to be 3 developers, 1 QA, it's now 1 developer and 3 QAs because developers can now generate so much more code using AI tools, and now that puts the burden on the testers to verify the increase in potential security flaws and things of that nature that I think we introduced if the code is not being tested and validated but generated from some random source. So that's one aspect. But I think the bigger question in the industry right now is how do we test the validity of the results of an AI model, and if the summaries and all the things that an LLM can generate are meaningful and they're free of hallucinations and things of that nature. I think that's a great use case for exploratory testing. I think there's also an opportunity to actually use other LLMs to test the output, from LLMs, and see if there's a consensus among LLMs on the results. But at the end of the day, you still need a human in the loop. We're not at this point yet where the human is completely eliminated from the dev test cycle. And as the technology matures, I'm sure there's going to be more opportunity for automation to test AI. But for now, I would say we're still very much in sort of the good old, exploratory testing, being able to trace back to the data, how the LLMs came up with certain results. But that is still sort of like the big problem for an industry to crack.
Makes sense.
No doubt. I mean, we could stay here and talk cloud native and AI and QA and testing.
Actually, AI was the star of the keynotes today, too.
Yeah, that's what we heard.
Anyway, hey, Martin, I want to thank you for stopping by. I can't believe you came all the way to Paris just to do a cloud native.
For this one session. This is great.
DevOps Unbound thing with us.
That's commitment.
Nice of
That's
you.
commitment.
Yep. But seriously, thanks to you and Tricentis as always. We're going to be back to our regular schedule of DevOps Unbound, I guess when we get back in another week or two. But until then, we'll be here live all week covering what's going on at KubeCon. Many thanks to Martin Klaus and Tricentis, Mitchell Ashley, and Alan Schimmel. You're watching Techstrong TV. Hey, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying our coverage here live at KubeCon. We are Techstrong. But it's a little crazy. I mean, Scott, I don't. Have you been to other KubeCons? Yeah,
I have, and this one is off the charts. You're right.
Absolutely. I was with Anil Gupta, who's the chairman of CNCF,
Sure.
and he told me last night this is the biggest KubeCon, bigger than San Diego.
Yeah.
If you remember San Diego before,
before COVID,
was the biggest one. This has now eclipsed that. So pretty cool stuff. You heard me say Scott. Let me introduce you to Scott Johnston. Scott is the CEO of Docker and has been now for, how long has it been? 8 years?
Just over 4 years.
4 years?
Been at Docker 10 years. So
I think I remember when you joined Docker, believe it or not.
February 2014. Docker is 11 years old tomorrow.
Really?
So Solomon walked on the stage at PyCon 2013, 11 years ago tomorrow, and brought Docker to the world. So here we go.
Very cool.
Very cool. I mean, this didn't exist. This didn't exist 10 years ago, right?
No, it did. No, this certainly didn't. So DevOps.com, I started in March of 2014.
Okay. So it was all
just
ascended
10
at the
years.
time.
Yeah, wow. Crazy.
Hard to believe.
But there's been a lot of changes since then, right?
Yes.
You know, back then, Docker was all about the container. Of course, a lot of water under that container, as they say.
A lot of water under the container. That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
And Docker has grown, morphed, stretched, pulled, changed, come out the other side with a very different business lineup.
That's right.
Than containers.
That's right.
Let's start there, if you don't mind, Scott. Share with the audience.
So our journey up to 2019 was really focused on the production use case. Helping operators run containers at scale in the data center, in the cloud, across multiple nodes. And so, of course, that involved orchestration. And back in the day, we had an orchestrator. Kubernetes then came on the scene. We eventually embraced Kubernetes, so on and so forth. In 2019, we realized that there was another opportunity for the company, and that was the developer market.
Yes.
And so we did a massive pivot in 2019, basically shed the operator business, shed the orchestration business to focus just on the needs of developer. And specifically, how can we help developers rapidly, as a team, develop more secure, higher quality software? And that's the journey we've been on the last 4 years.
And you know what? It as you said, it was a pretty radical pivot.
Big shift.
But in hindsight, genius, right?
I'd rather be lucky than smart, as they say.
It's
right?
good to be both.
It's rather be lucky than smart.
That's the story of my life.
But developer experience is now
a key piece of it. Absolutely. So we're going to get into some of this now, though. But I wanted to. Now, you guys made some announcements recently.
We did.
Well, let's go there if you don't mind.
Sure. So in this focus on developer experience, it's specifically on what we call the inner loop. And that is what the developer is doing locally when they edit the code, build the code, test the code, verify the code, debug the code, and they go around and around that loop before they do the git commit. So it's all, which is then the outer loop.
Okay.
Right? So how do you help them go fast in that inner loop? And one of the realizations we came to is seeing the data coming back is that there's some points of that inner loop that are not efficient, that are not optimized, where the developer is waiting. So for example, the developer can wait in aggregate sometimes up to an hour a day for their builds to complete locally. They type Docker build and they go get a cup of coffee or they go to lunch. And we came to the realization of well, wait a minute, we can bring the power of cloud to that local build experience. So they have the same developer experience, but offload the build to the public cloud. We're seeing 39 times speed ups, which, to put that in context, that an hour becomes a minute and a half. That's free time.
Absolutely.
That's time back in the developer's day.
To do other things. You know,
Right.
I've seen them, and you've probably seen them too. A lot of these surveys that say developers only spend about 30% of their time developing.
Actually writing code.
Writing
Yeah,
code,
right.
Because a lot of it is waiting for
Stuff.
stuff
Yeah.
to render, right?
Right, that's right.
And
So give them more time back in their day to stay in the flow state, be creative, write code.
because what do developers like to do? Write code.
They like to write code. They're creative. They want to build,
I
right?
agree with you, man. That's where it's at. So working on that inner loop, what else do we got
That's a big
going
one.
on?
So similar to the inner loop, similar to build, another big activity in the inner loop is test.
Right?
Okay, so now I built my container, now I want to test it locally. But if that container, or if that application has like 20 different services, that can weigh down the laptop. Or if they're developing on an M1 ARM, but their production is x86, now they have an architecture difference.
Yep.
Right? So we bought a company in December called Test Containers, which allows you to have the same test experience locally as you have in the cloud. On these same principles of like burst out to the cloud to do what the cloud does best. So we announced this week a partnership with Red Hat.
Beautiful.
Where developer can develop locally, but if they want to burst out to their Red Hat OpenShift cluster to run the test there, seamless. One command, deploy, done.
So lucky and smart.
I'll take lucky. I'll take lucky.
Why didn't someone think of this earlier?
I mean, OpenShift and our big customers and big banks, it is what platform engineers use to deploy to.
Yeah.
They want to bring they want to avoid works on my machine, so they want to make the test environment as close as possible to the production environment. And we're like, fantastic. Let's burst from the local test environment to the OpenShift environment.
I mean,
call it good.
So I'm not as technical as you probably, right? But look, one of the first big uses, not at Techstrong, when I was at my last company, when the cloud first came on the scene, was what a difference, game changer for testing.
Yes.
Testing was a expensive, time-consuming pain in the butt.
100%.
Now, all of a sudden, I had but near infinite scale for my unit test and all my load testing and all of that. So testers already knew that the cloud was your path to buying 100,000 different flavors of laptop and everything.
Right.
Why did it take so long, you think, to do this with containers?
I think at the time, back in the day, right, you had a dedicated test team.
Right.
Remember this? And it was very much waterfall. So like write the code, someone else built it, someone else tested it, and like waterfall down the way. And in those days, okay, you deploy once a month. You deploy
or once a quarter or
once
twice a year.
Yeah, exactly. But now we're in this world where like value shipped is the premium. So how quickly can you ship value to production?
Yep.
And so that combined with automation, combined with, again, humbly, the ease with which the containers become that unit of work is pulling more and more that into the developer environment. So how do you make it easy and automated for the developer to do testing as quickly as possible then versus throw it over the wall to someone downstream? So I think that's the dynamic now, and is that like, hey, the faster we can solve issues, the better quality software that's going to be. Developer can take action and then move on. I mean,
not only that, you have a better test coverage.
Yes, exactly. I liken it to a manufacturing example, which the Japanese manufacturers brought, which is they have this notion of the andon cord on the line, right? So if a worker sees a problem, they pull that andon cord because they know fixing it on the line costs $1. You fix it in inventory, it costs $10.
Recall costs you $1,000.
Recall costs you $1 million, right?
Yeah.
And so very much what we can do for manufacturing, we can bring to software.
Absolutely.
Like help the developer solve it right then. Not in CI, not in production, not, oh my God, when the customer sees it.
Yep.
Right? And so that's what we're doing. We're helping the developers.
It's a shift left of solving the problem.
That's what
you're doing.
Solve problems as soon as possible.
Both of these are available now or just announced?
Variable now.
Very cool.
So the one other thing we're doing this week, and you're going to hear a common theme here, which is, again, the hybrid local and cloud. So, of course, the meme of the moment, Gen AI, right? So Gen AI works fantastic on laptops that have a GPU, but those laptops have a fixed capacity of GPUs, fixed speed of GPUs. So what we're also highlighting this week is the ability to burst that LLM out to a cloud and run it on a cloud node with a big beefy GPU.
A real NVIDIA deal. Right?
Or tens of NVIDIA GPUs in the cloud, right? So again, how do you speed up that iteration? Take advantage of the cloud for what cloud is good for.
I mean, look, it's that same mindset as moving your testing off,
That's right. Or your builds
and
up.
this is a great use for the cloud, right? Because so many people say, I want to host my app in the cloud. I need good identity, security in the cloud. But the cloud works best for, I think, little jobs like
Very
this.
specific.
Yeah.
Surgical.
Boom, boom, in, out, burstable.
That's right.
I need what I need and I'm done. I'll use it again next time. Versus these sprawling infrastructures that we spin up.
I mean, production has found ways where spiky workloads work well in the cloud. Like retail, Christmas season or Black Friday, okay, great. But we also realize that there's so much power there that the developer is not able to harness because it can be difficult to set up and provision and secure. So our brand is simplifying. Right. So if we could simplify all that, actually we take it completely off the developer's plate. Developer just uses the same commands behind the scenes, burst out to the cloud.
And that's look, like I said, sometimes I sit around and say, why didn't I think of that?
Well, there you go. There
exactly.
you go.
Hey, I want to bring up another topic.
Yeah.
So, we're here at KubeCon. We're DevOps.com. We're cloud native now and all these other.
That's right.
Well, they can't see it online, but over here is our real background with all of our sites. At the heart of a lot of this is that whole CI/CD pipeline process. Mm-hmm. And it's, we're doing this big research project right now called DevOps Next.
Right.
Where we're looking at, we're moving away from cobbling together point solutions. And it's a natural evolution.
Right, sure.
To more of a platform, more of a, it organic, if you will, play. We're not just cobbling.
Right.
And the heart of that is that CI/CD process. We've come a long way, but there's a long way yet to go that can be done.
That's right.
A lot of these little things, point kind of things that you're talking about, fit into a larger picture of how do we speed up CI/CD.
That's right. That's right.
So what's the Docker view there?
And look, CI/CD plays a really critical role for particularly that intersection between dev and ops of what are the final checks that this app has to go through, particularly for regulated industries, mission critical workloads. And there's a set of tests and certifications and checks that absolutely have to be done before that workload goes into production. But we hear from customers that sometimes it can take them 5, 6, 7 times looping through CI before they actually
go to
are
CD.
able to get CI/CD.
So it gets bounced
before it gets into production.
Right.
And that means latency. That means time. That means the dev is waiting for stuff to come back.
That 30% number,
that's
right?
That's exactly right, because they're waiting for something else to finish before they can take action. And so we see that, and we see what we've been bringing to market of okay, if we can actually help the devs solve it earlier, maybe instead of 5, 6, or 7 times through CI, maybe they go once or twice through CI. And so everyone benefits. Faster delivery of value. The dev is solving problems right then and there, not 30 minutes later, not 60 minutes later when it comes back from CI. And the CI team is known for a high velocity enabler. So everyone kind of wins in bringing these best of both worlds, best of inner loop to the best of outer loop, as we call it.
Docker's not done with this, though.
We're not done. 11 years going, we're just getting going. We're just entering our second decade. All of us here, right? Second decade.
You're 100%, you're dead on that. Right? And I think about, wow, just wow. Do you envision a time where instead of helping these companies with CI/CD kind of accelerators or catalysts, people go to Docker for CI/CD?
It's an interesting question, and it gets into company evolution question as well. We have found a lot of success the last 4 years, as you referenced, staying focused on the needs of developers. And I think what that could mean with automation and where a lot of the technology is going is, does it still look like traditional dev, CI/CD production 5 years from now, 6 years from now?
I don't think so.
It could radically change. And it's not only the result of automation and new technologies, but it's also now we're injecting Gen AI and data into the equation as well, which now has to be part
Not
of
just
that
Gen AI, but I say ML ops.
all up. You're right.
Yeah.
All up. And that's fascinating too, right? Because now you're shipping not just code, you're shipping models and the data with that model. And you're having to go through iterations that today we go through with code that you're going to be iterating with models, iterating with data.
That they're going to iterate themselves almost.
I mean, you have to automate it. Otherwise, everything's going to slow down again, right?
Yeah.
And now you have this new persona, the data scientist, who is upstream helping tune the model. But then it's the devs that is taking that and incorporating it. So we're going to evolve. We as an industry are going to evolve.
Yes.
And Docker's going to be there.
Evolve right along with it.
Docker's going to be there to serve that development team and help them take advantage of all these great technologies and the data and the models to make great apps.
I love it. Scott, all of the things we're talking, well, what we just spoke about is not available today, but everything else we spoke about is.
Yep.
We can get it at docker.com.
Docker.com. That's right.
All right. Hey, man, thank you so much.
Always good to talk, Alan.
All right. Scott Johnston, CEO at Docker. Lots of stuff going on there. This ain't containers anymore. Check it out. We're live in Paris. We'll be back in a moment. I think we have Tenable up next. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone. We're back here live at Paris for KubeCon. It's a roaring KubeCon. You don't hear it because our microphones are good. But there's like a din in the place of, all these conversations and things going on. I want to introduce you to my next guest. His name is Lior. Let me make sure I get this right. Zatlavi, right?
That's pretty good. Thank you.
Lior Zatlavi. Lior is with Tenable. Is it still Tenable? It's not Tenable Network Security. It's just Tenable now, right?
The company's name is Tenable.
Right. I'm old. But Lior, when did you join Tenable? You came with an acquisition, about a year and a half ago?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm a technical evangelist for a product called Tenable Cloud Security, which used to be Hermetic. So we came to Tenable with the Hermetic acquisition back in October, just a few months ago. And now we're Tenable Cloud Security and very, very excited to be part of this really amazing large company. Such a great opportunity to bring our mission and what we do in cloud security to so many companies and bring this advancement to the cloud security world.
Sure. So let's talk about that, right? I mean, we're here at Cloud Native. And, I remember when the cloud first came out, my friend Rich Mogul, who at the time was at Gartner, said a lot of security companies were cloud washing their security offerings. What he meant was they were taking what they had before cloud and just pushing it up to the cloud. But it really wasn't cloud security. Well, it's the same thing, I think, when we talk about cloud security that was designed to work, let's say, on hypervisors and that whole infrastructure as a service type of environment. Now, all of a sudden, you got cloud native, Kubernetes, containers, microservices. It is cloud, but it's probably closer to like PaaS, platform as a service, than it is to infrastructure. And what worked necessarily for cloud security doesn't necessarily work for cloud native security. Thoughts on that, and why is what you're doing in Tenable Cloud Security cloud native?
Exactly. So I think you're right on at making this distinction, because the cloud is really amazing new technology. Not that new, but still fairly new.
Fairly new. It's maybe 10 years old, 12 years old.
Something like that. So it hasn't been around forever. So there's not like overabundant experience of people.
Actually, 15 years old.
Yeah, something like, but it's not like 40, 50 years in the making that, it really has penetrated into like the amount of talent that you have out there in the market, right?
Yep.
And expertise really is the name of the game, and that really changes. By the way, just what you mentioned, because securing cloud native technologies, or even companies that are now migrating their technologies into the cloud, is not just a matter of taking your security tools that you have and you've been traditionally using them on-prem and then just shifting them, moving them to the cloud, and that's it. Right, that puts you in not a great position, because to have really effective, cutting edge technology to secure cloud, you need to be designing it for the cloud. And it needs to be designed from day one. And I think that was the mission of companies like Hermetic, who started as companies for security of cloud native solutions, right? Because it has to be designed to the cloud. It's a new game. It has to be, the technology has to be there. It has to be fit, because what it needs to bring to the client eventually is out of the box expertise, right? They need to be getting simplification of really complex concepts, processed very well, very professionally, very, I would say, adaptly into what cloud technology is. And for that, it has to be designed for that specific purpose, and then bring them like the insights and the direction that they need in order to secure their environments, right? Because that's the thing. It's a very dynamic new environment, very complicated, changed all the time. And you need someone, or need a product that was designed specifically for that. And this, of course, also applies for Kubernetes. Right? This is why it's by the way, it's great to be here in Paris. Always a good,
not a bad place to be.
Not a bad place to be. And not just because of, the beautiful architecture that we have around, in more than one way.
Good food.
Good architecture.
Yeah, good. It's a very pleasant view.
Amazing. But also I think the company, the people that we have here, the professionals that come to the booth and we talk to them and we meet them and we go in the different sessions is really amazing. The kind of energy. And by the way, I have some trouble hearing you, so
okay.
I hope it's because of all the conversation.
Well, luckily the mics are good. They hear us. That's what counts.
That's exactly it. So amazing. We get to talk to so many people who live and breathe cloud, live and breathe Kubernetes, which is amazing technology and really, really significant to be securing it. And that's why it's so exciting to be here. For people who do that, it's really exciting to be here, and it's really exciting to talk about the new things that we bring out and how they help us accomplish that mission of helping our customers securing their environments.
So, any news from Tenable here at the show?
Yeah. So just right before KubeCon, we actually announced a bunch of features directed at Kubernetes security that I think really showcase a lot of the power that we have in our mission. So, but before I'm going to talk about that, I just want to express one more thing. I think that technologies like the cloud, as we mentioned, they are very complex. They have a lot of potential to them, but they are very complex to manage. And complexity is an enemy for security, because when something is complex, when it can go wrong, it will go wrong.
Hard enough to do when it's easy. It's impossible to do when it's hard.
100%. So
Agreed.
In order to have the ability to get the kind of control, you need, as we mentioned, the kind of technology that was designed specifically for that. And that, by the way, is specifically true about Kubernetes, right? Because if you have cloud environments, thinking about Kubernetes and the kind of complexities that there are there, they sort of get to a point where a lot of security professionals who aren't Kubernetes engineers, they don't live and breathe the YAML and the kind of configurations, and it is very, very complicated technology. And it might put them a bit at a loss, right? When you're a security professional and you're not well versed in that, in a technology that you need to protect, you're really at a loss with when you work with the infrastructure people in your organization. That they have, of course, a lot more experience there, and you kind of want to, if you think about it, put restrictions on what they can and cannot do, and of course, business always wins. So that's a big challenge. For a lot of these security professionals. This is how we support them by doing the analysis automatically, by connecting to the clusters as we connect to cloud environments, and doing the analysis and presenting it in very, very readable and consumable way, and also actionable, that they can take the kind of output that we get and allow them to really use it, and also have like a common language. Because you don't have to be a Kubernetes expert, for example, to use our product and to understand the problems that it communicates, and to understand how to support them. If you're a security professional, that's great, because you understand the security context, you understand the problems, you understand its meaning and the context, and then you can use it in that aspect without being a Kubernetes expert. Of course, you always need to advance your skills, right? So, but that gives like a very, very good platform and benchmark to do that.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's in general, and I think that the new things that we released are really an evidence of that. So first of all, we just released the ability, just announced the ability to connect to on-prem clusters. So not just clusters managed by managed services, for example, like EKS, AKS, GK, or even clusters that are deployed in cloud environments, but also clusters that are deployed on-prem, which allows us to bring our abilities to there. So one thing that we provide is, for example, really deep visibility, which again, very easy to consume. Even if you're not that familiar with all the kinds of resources and how they interact, you can get them in a very clear way. Right. But not just that, also analysis of the kind of security issues that there are with the cluster, and contextualize into the best practices that there are for Kubernetes clusters, as we do for like the entire cloud environment. And in that aspect, I think it's also very significant to understand that the kind of insights that we give are not just for the cluster, but also for the cloud environment, which it is a part of or integrates with.
Yep.
Which is also very important because we're able to tell the entire story using that, right? Using that exact thing.
It's a big thing. It's the whole ease of use. Look, it's a long story in security, right? And it's also part of the reason when we look at DevSecOps, for instance, you can't expect non-security people for non-security people to use security tools that are so hard that even the security people don't use. So that whole visibility ease thing is important. Where can people get information on this?
So go on our website, of course, and we just released a blog post about that feature and also the other features that we're going to talk about. And if they're at KubeCon, they
come by your booth. Well, this is live. Maybe they're watching.
I sure hope so. I mean, if they can grab me while we're here, I mean, once we're done with the interview.
Run.
Yeah. So one more thing that I wanted to talk about is something that a lot of people have been really excited about here at the booth when we met them, is there is a concept in a Kubernetes cluster called an admission controller. So that's a component that you can deploy that is basically part of the pipeline of the deployment of new resources. So when you do kube control applied, it actually goes through that as a validation station. So what we're able to do is allow customers to very easily deploy their own admission controller and configure policies. It's based on something called Gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper.
Yeah, which is great technology. However, it could be a little overwhelming for people to deploy and then manage, right? So instead of having to deploy it themselves, they can configure it within the product. It is then deployed to the cluster, and they can manage it in an intuitive interface that allows them to configure the kind of policy that they want the admission control to enforce, which is really great because, again, a lot of people can make a lot of benefit from such a feature, but sometimes it could be a little hard to get started with, right? So they can do it in the intuitive interface. If they want, they can also do it in the Rego language by OPA,
sure,
which is how it usually is done. So they can do it in raw form.
Okay.
And then they can deploy things and track the logs of how it worked. And
done a lot with OPA. Excellent, man. Good stuff. Lior, thank you for being on our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This camera right here, Lior Zatlavi from Tenable, live with us in Paris. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
Everybody, welcome back here. We are still at KubeCon. On, I guess, what day is this? I think it's Tuesday. I think it's Wednesday. I think it's Friday. No, it's one of those days we're here at Kube. First day is Wednesday. And I'm very pleased to be joined by someone who's been on Techstrong TV before. Great guest is Ben Potter, who is head of product with Coder. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Good to catch up with you again. Thanks for sponsoring the breakfast that we had Tuesday morning.
Oh, it was great.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of good people, a lot of good conversations.
Yeah, very good grapefruit juice too.
It was good. The food was good. The venue, kind of a nice start to before we got, the insanity started happening, right?
Yeah.
That is cloud native KubeCon. Well, for folks that don't know Coder, tell us a little bit about Coder.
Yeah, so Coder is a platform for cloud developer environments. So we make it very easy for a developer to click a button, get a cloud instance running on a Kubernetes cluster with all of their tools, languages, and dependencies pre-installed. So a developer doesn't have to go through the process of setting up their laptop. They could even do it all through the web browser, and yet still use the editors that they like to use to get their work done.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, maybe we can contrast with sort of developer portal. That's one of the popular aspects of platform engineering. Now, you can probably imagine a lot of different definitions of what that means. Backstage is a pretty popular one. There are other things, of course, too. In a way, I've always kind of envisioned as sort of the shelf of all the tools and templates or guidelines or whatever you might need to kind of build your environment and start becoming be productive. But that's still work too, going from there, even if you've got patterns to work from and code libraries, and you still got to have an environment to put it all together. I imagine that's part of what you're talking about with a cloud developer environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday I went to Backstage Con, and it was very cool to see how different organizations are creating this kind of one-stop shop for developers to get their tools. And I saw it framed in a few different ways. One that really resonated with me was the security angle, where they essentially said things that developers create and use in Backstage has security included. Developers don't necessarily have to think about it. If you want to do something outside of Backstage, that's fine, but then you have to think about a lot of these security aspects that may not necessarily be your forte or your interest, where Backstage kind of provides security as a platform. Yeah, so that's internal developer portals, is essentially being able to kind of provide these tools out of the box for you. How an IDP compares to a CDE, a cloud developer environment, is an IDP, for the most part, helps with a lot of stuff after developers kind of done writing and committing their code. Maybe it helps with day zero in terms of getting like a scaffolded project set up. But then when a developer actually needs to get into their environment, the tools that they're using are entirely different from the tools that Backstage offers. For example, Python, Docker, Java, and these are all things that developers need to set up, and those things need to be secured as well. So that's where a CDE comes in, is you can essentially create a secure by default developer experience for day two onward. So yeah, that's how I see those two things kind of playing together.
Cool. Then, so for a CDE, is it kind of like having an image of an operating system that you start with? Or is it an automation that builds things with whatever the latest process, security, tools, configurations? Is it more dynamic, or is it more, here's an image you can work with? I don't know if that's the right term to use.
Yeah, we actually have a combination of both. So when we started, we were only the image, which is maybe a central platform team kind of secures these images with the tools on it, and then offers them to developers to use for their workspaces. We still support that, and a lot of people are doing that. What we're seeing people do on top of this is using the dev container spec on top of secured images for developers to then be able to bring their own tools while still being from a secured source, such as an artifact manager like Artifactory. Sure. Yeah. So that kind of creates this nice hybrid of, there's a secured base image by the platform team, but then developer teams can then go in and bring their own tools as well. Of course, still coming from a secured source, but where these tools actually belong.
We hope, yes.
Yeah.
Is it also kind of a walled garden, kind of like a sandbox, so things can't escape or things can't come in that you don't want to? Or is it that tightly buttoned down? Or do you have that option?
A lot of our users do a walled garden approach, where artifacts can only be downloaded from Artifactory, for example, and not the public internet. And I think the benefit to that is you're able to identify problems and security issues while you're developing, as opposed to later on in a pipeline.
Okay. What is, developers pretty independent folks.
Yeah.
We like the tools we like, and there's some fun in creating our environments, right? So maybe I don't know if giving up is the right word, but what's the thing that folks usually have to get used to the most about working in a CDE versus, let's say, a kind of DIY approach?
Yeah, and it is a trade-off. it's not a trade-off in terms of the editors people are using and their themes and extensions. We support all of that, but it is in kind of the way you work. For example, like these workspaces are designed to be like ephemeral, which is maybe good from a security and a workflow perspective, but it means that the tools that you installed yesterday manually won't be there the next day, because the only way to really get these tools in long term is through automation and through building these images and dev containers. So yeah, a question we commonly get is, I installed Java in my workspace, and then the next day it wasn't there, and it's like, oh well, let's do this the coder way, essentially.
Interesting. Yeah, one of the things that really resonated when you and I talked previously was we don't work on just one thing. We may work on 3 applications, but 8 environments for each one of them, but depending on what's running and what combination of what cloud and the stack and all of that kind of thing. And it can be nearly impossible to keep that up to date, more or less do a bunch of work and then realize I'm not in the right environment here. That seems to be a big time savings right there.
Yeah, I like it because I can, I don't do development every day, but I can go into the coder project if I wanted to make a change. And I know that I have all the latest tools in there, and I can context switch from that to maybe doing docs work, maybe to doing like an infrastructure project, all of which I know is using the latest and greatest tools. And it just works. I don't have to worry about old dependencies and old installs. So yeah, for me, the kind of project switching has been huge using Coder.
I don't know if we've talked about this yet. How does the, we haven't mentioned AI yet. I think that's a record to go this long without talking about AI. And now we're doing much more development, not only with AI ML, but with large language models and vector databases and training models and things like that. How does that change or influence kind of CDE and how you think about it? Is that something we're just starting to kind of explore and figure out, or have you made some progress on that yet?
Yeah, what's cool here is we have users already using Coder for AI use cases. So it's not just a buzzword or something that we'd like to see happen, but something that's actually happening. And it was something too that was kind of informed by how our users are using it. So the main one that I think has been extremely kind of obvious, but it's giving developers access to cloud GPUs. So for people who need to do training, whether it's like a local model or with a remote one, you still need GPUs to be able to do these things at scale. And cloud GPUs are very hard to get. And the ML engineers might not want to be the person also fiddling in the cloud and getting the tuning and picking the GPUs and getting them to start and stop right. So being able to use Code as a platform to give those developers GPUs directly for that kind of loop development is really important. The other one we've seen, again, where customers are actually doing this, is just pre-installing AI tools in workspaces, whether it's a local model or something like Copilot that's an IDE extension, but then kind of adds magic in. So the same magic that, I already automatically have the right version of Python. I also have Copilot, and this is like the default dev experience, essentially.
I'm curious, and this may not be part of what Coder does, maybe it is. How are people thinking about putting the guardrails around the variations of Copilot for doing development with? Because now you have kind of an unknown source. Well, you know where the source is, but you don't know where all of its sources are coming from necessarily.
Yeah.
To add to your code enhancement, code creation.
This is something I'm also really interested in as well. A lot of the organizations we've talked to have actually just rolled out Copilot and used the guardrails that maybe Microsoft has in place for that, or Azure has in place for that. But I have a feeling as more and more kind of workloads get on, that's not going to cut it, and they're going to want more auditing and more security controls around it. The way our product helps with that is we do in a small way, and I think as we learn more from our users, we can do more. We can essentially control and create governance around what users can use Copilot and what can't, both from a network layer as well as just a role-based access layer. So you could create a sensitive network that only uses local models, and then Copilot ones for more public open source activities. So that's essentially, again, baking in the best practices from the beginning. Maybe more sensitive, use a local model. Less sensitive, use Copilot. But again, I'm super interested here because I think we're still very, very early in this.
It seems like we're all kind of learning different parts of that whole ecosystem and how to work with it, how to manage it, where do we need controls, where don't we?
Yeah, I mean, I think my answer for you even a week ago or 2 weeks ago would have been totally different. I'm
probably,
really learning
if I would have asked you last time we talked, oh, well, now here's what we're thinking about.
Yeah.
So how about any announcements? Did you announce some things at the show?
Yeah, so we recently released our Backstage plugin. So I think this is a great way for people who are already using Backstage to then add that zero friction setup for the dev environment. And it also lets you start kind of introducing and thinking about the tools that developers use on a daily basis when they're writing code, not just when they're deploying code. Again, I think Backstage does a great job with the deploying and test and preview aspect of it. But I think integrating a CDE, whether it's Coder or whether it's even just a local dev container, which we also made a plugin for, really thinking about the tools that developers use every day is kind of the next step in platform engineering.
Very nice. I'm curious, you've been at the booth most of the day, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
You're talking to a lot of people. What are you hearing from people at KubeCon? Is there some themes of topics or questions that are coming up?
A lot about security and a lot about Backstage, actually. We would demo the Backstage plugin and more people would come and be like, oh, is that Backstage? And I'm like, maybe we should also just put this up on the monitor so people can kind of see that we have
Put it in a loop up there so they can see at least some of it working.
Yeah, so if you go over to the Coder booth now, you'll see that actually up. And
these guys here behind the camera do that kind of thing, so it can help you out, I'll bet.
Cool.
So security, what do they want to know about security?
Yeah, I think there's like two topics. I think supply chain security is still kind of top of mind, as well as more and more, and this is probably just because we're talking about editors, but more and more about getting source code off of developer laptops. Whether that's moving to something like virtual desktop or ideally something that's a little bit snappier and faster, like a CDE. So those are the kind of two topics I've seen. But again, I think that's because we're in the IDE space. So I'm sure there's a lot of other security conversations going on.
Well, and it'll be a different set of questions and new AI questions at the next KubeCon or whatever conference. So talk to us about if someone wants to go give Coder a try. Being cloud-based, I'm sure it's got to be pretty easy to get into.
Yeah, so if you like GitHub, Coder's on GitHub. Just go to github.com/coder. Our docs are also a great place to get started on coder.com. And yeah, if you wanted to try the Backstage plugin as well, it's the first thing on our blog right now is the Backstage plugin, and it's also in our GitHub.
Okay, very good. Coder.com. Check out the blog about the Backstage announcement. Good. Well, hang in there. Got a few more days to go.
Day 2, I guess.
You know, it's not a sprint; it's a marathon here at these events, I guess, if that applies. But yeah, it's it at lunchtime. This place was insane. They started making announcements over the speakers. I felt like we were in the airport terminal, and you're like, hold on a second, I can't talk. They're announcements. It is just insane. If you're not here, it's crazy, but it's a lot of fun too, and it's great to see people. Great to see you in person, and
yeah, likewise.
Spend some more time together. So great. Well, thanks for joining us, coming by. Be sure to check out the Backstage plugin. More importantly, just spend some time with Coder, get a feel for cloud development environments. And really think about, well, what if I wasn't doing these things, I'm using this kind of a technology, how's that going to help me? If you're one of those folks that gets to support 25 variations of 5 different apps, my heart bleeds for you. But this sounds like a good way to help you out with that problem too. So thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
Good chatting with you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time. But I think we're done here for the day. What time do we start broadcasting tonight, gentlemen, or tomorrow? 11 a.m. tomorrow? Okay, 11 a.m. Paris time, Central Europe time. We'll be cranking out more interviews, talking with more great folks like Ben, and you'll see some more of the interviews of the day back here on Techstrong TV from the first day of KubeCon. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. See you tomorrow.